Hey everyone, it's Kristen. So we just talked about Spider-Woman, the first Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew. So now we're going to talk about the second Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter, who is in the new Madam Web movie. And I wanted to talk about her because she, ironically enough, is also, in addition to being the second Spider-Woman, is the second Madam Web. I'm not going to go through her origin story. I usually go through the origin at the beginning when we talk about characters because just to give you a little background, but since in this limited series it explains her origin, I'm not going to go into it right now. So um, I'm going to go into Madam Web. And so my first exposure to her was, of course, the 90s animated Spider-Man animated series. And she appeared, in her chair with the web behind her and as an older woman. And what made that really cool, as I learned later, is that she was voiced by Joan Lee, Stan Lee's wife, which I think is really cool that his wife got to be involved in one of his projects. I mean, and plus Madam Web was such a cool character. Like she popped up and she guided Spider-Man in this mission that he needed to do in order to save, all the universes, all the multiverses. I just think that was really cool. Like that was one of my favorite Spider-Man arcs. And she was also, instrumental in the Secret Wars arc because, of course, that was leading to him being the leader for the saving the multiverse, the Spider multiverse. Anyway, so in the comic book, she appeared in Amazing Spider-Man 210 in November of 1980. I remember that because I was thinking she is very similar to Destiny, the mutant that's associated with Mystique mostly. And Destiny appeared in Uncanny X-Men 141 in connection to the Days of the Past story arc in October of 1980. So here these two characters are very similar because they're both mutants. They're both blind. They're both, first appearance at least, they're older. So very similar, and yet they are totally different, and they appeared just within a month of each other. So I'm wondering if someone heard that idea around the Marvel office and was like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to use that. I mean, so they basically kind of stole from this themselves, which is kind of funny. So Madam Web has this condition that a skeletal muscular weakness. I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I messed it up last couple times I tried to pronounce it, so I'm not going to try. But it's MG for short. And so she has to be in this, this life support system that her husband, because her name's Cassandra Webb, that her husband Jonathan Webb designed for her. So she was born blind, and as a mutant, she has the ability to see the future. So I know a lot of people out there are thinking, well, she's an old woman. How come she's a young woman in the movie? Well, she participated in this arcane ritual called the Gathering of the Five, which gave her immortality. Supposedly, it really didn't, and youth, and cured her her MG. So she does appear youthful, but then at the same time, during M Day, she appears youthful. When Scarlet Witch said no more mutants, she didn't lose her powers because of that. She still had her powers at that point. She appeared youthful. And then later when we see her again, she's old again. So, so who knows? Basically, who knows? She's been old, young, old, just back and forth. So what her connection to Spider-Woman is that she saw this event happening where the Craven family was trying to kill like all the spider related people, basically. And so she herself was killed by the original Craven the Hunter's wife, Sasha, but before she died, she passed her powers, which I didn't know you could do this, passed her powers to Julia Carpenter, who became the second Madam Web. So, and then basically she died, and then she was resurrected again, and she died again because she like sustained wounds um, caused by Electro, and she had this medicine that she could take to save her life, but she said that she saw the future and she wanted no part of it, which that would be really scary to think about. If a, precog saw the future and was like, I'd rather die than be a part of that future. I mean, I don't think we ever know what she's talking about, what future she's talking about, but it has to be something crazy because she'd rather die than be a part of that future. I mean, well, so anyway, that's just like a super brief, condensed history of her. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, maybe this Madam Web movie is like an origin story, and that's kind of what it looks like. And of course, the comic books are separate from the movies. I mean, yeah, the movies draw from the comic books, but they don't actually like okay, they shouldn't impact the comic books, but I know that they have because they changed Wanda and Quicksilver's origins to not be Magneto's kids because of the movies, which irritates me still. I mean, anyway, we won't get into that because that's a whole different thing. So, anyway, movies separate from the comic books. So, they just draw inspiration from it. So, of course, you know. So, we're going to talk about Spider-Woman, but we won't talk about her origin, how she got her powers, because in this miniseries, in the second issue, it tells you the origin of her. So at this point, Spider-Woman is working for the government, a government agency called the Commission. And she also, part of the West Coast Avengers, and she works with, in the beginning of this, we see a cameo by U.S. Agent. Okay. I'm just going to try to make this super brief. It's hard for me to talk about a character and origins and be brief, but I will try. So, U.S. Agent, his brother was like a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he died there. But he idolized his big brother, and he wanted to be a hero just like him. So when he joined the army, it was during peacetime, so he didn't get the chance to be a hero, and he got out, honorable discharge, and he heard from this friend that there was this person that he could get powers from in order to become a hero, the power broker, like it was in the so yeah, like the movies and TV series draw from the comic books, but of course they're not completely comic book accurate. So anyway, he, you know, basically gets a government sponsorship or a corporate sponsorship and becomes super patriot, and he starts like campaigning to replace Captain America as the national like symbol, saying, he's outdated and it should be him instead. And he stages like demonstrations in order to kind of draw Captain America out, which Captain America does not appreciate, and says, hey, you could have, someone could have gotten hurt at one of these demonstrations. You need to stop it. And they fight, and basically, it's kind of a draw, but Super Patriot thinks he wins. And so, basically, at some point, the government says, hey, we own Captain America. We own that trademark, basically. So you need to give it back or you need to work for us. Captain America did not want to work for them. So he's like, fine, take it. You can have it. I don't want it anymore. So, So U.S. Agent is one of the proposed replacements for Captain America. So he becomes the new Captain America, but he gets into trouble because like he loses control and like kills Professor Power. He's like this historian, strategist, thinks that the U.S. should rule the world, kind of crazy guy. He has, body armor and stuff like that. So he kills him, and U.S. Agent realizes, kind of maybe I shouldn't be Captain America. So he convinces Captain America to take it back. So he does, but also the Watchdogs, this like extremist group, terrorist group, they kill U.S. Agent's parents, and so that causes him to totally fly off the handle, and he starts, murdering all the Watchdog members. And basically, the government is like, whoa, we can't have this. So what they do is they stage his assassination in order to give him a new identity. And that's where we find him right now. He is Jack Daniels. I thought that was a funny name. And he has no memory of who he used to be. Like, they hypnotized him and erased, like, all of his memories and gave him new speech patterns, new mannerisms, nothing to tie him to John Walker. So that's where we are in this. So basically, they're chasing bad guys. And Spider-Woman has these psi webs, which we'll talk about with her origin story in the next issue. And so they catch all the criminals. One escapes. And Spider-Woman lifts up the back of the car so he can't go anywhere. U.S. Agent basically puts him down. And Spider-Woman's like, you had fun with that, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, why not, didn't you? And she's like, no. There were too many civilians that could have been injured. And he's like, okay, whatever. And then she's like, well, I guess, oh yeah. She's like, well, we better get back to the car. And he's like, oh, you can take it. I know you need to pick up your parents from LAX. Which is funny because they put in here like a little asterisk and put Los Angeles International Airport by LAX, just in case you didn't know that that's what it was. I just thought that was kind of funny because I feel like almost everyone knows what LAX is. But anyway, maybe they had to do that. I don't know. So he's like, you should take the car. You need to go pick up your parents. And that surprises her because, he's usually so unfeeling. And she mentions that maybe the death of Mockingbird, has softened him. So basically, Mockingbird sacrificed herself in order to save her estranged husband, Hawkeye, from Mephisto. And basically, very briefly, Mockingbird is a SHIELD agent, and she's like super trained in hand-to-hand combat weaponry. Like, just, you probably remember her from Agents of SHIELD. But anyway, so she and, Hawkeye used to be together, and then they were estranged, and then they got back together. Anyway, so she died, but really it was found later that it wasn't her, it was a Skrull. I mean, that's, kind of the answer, is that, oh no, they didn't really die, and then they make up something. Like, oh, it was Skrull that died, or oh, just her body died, but her spirit is still alive. Because that's what they did with this first Spider-Woman. They said, because she died on a battle with Morgan Le Fay on the astral plane. Think, Professor Xavier, Shadow King. But really, she didn't die. Her spirit was trapped there. So the Avengers and Doctor Strange rescue her and rescue her spirit and therefore resurrect her. I don't think I talked about that in the first video. but that just came to my mind since we're talking about death. Anyway, so back to this. She goes to pick up her parents, and she talks about how they were never really there. She saw them more on National Geographic than she did, and their last name is Cornwall. She saw them more on National Geographic than she did in person. You know, she had nannies and stuff that took care of her. And they're talking about their newest, place in Peru, in the Amazon jungle, where they have this lodge that they take tourists for nature hikes and boat rides, in order to basically promote the conservation of the rainforest, because there's so many of the Amazon jungle, because there's so many different species and animals that live in just this one little place. And they're asking her about her new mysterious job, which is being Spider-Woman, but they don't know about that. And so they get to see their granddaughter Rachel, who, because Julia, well, we'll talk about Rachel more in the next, anyway, basically, in college she married, I think his name was Larry, and they had Rachel, so she dropped out of college, and then they got divorced because Larry apparently turned into a not nice person, and then he got custody of Rachel, and it really messed her up, and then he got killed in the crosshairs of a, supervillain battle with the manipulator, which we'll talk about later. So now she's back to raising Rachel, on her own, but she has a nanny who helps her out, Consuela. So they're talking, about more about the Amazon, and her parents said, we have a colleague that's going to call us here, because we told him we'd be here, so he's going to call us here. And I'm surprised he hasn't called us here yet. I mean, because it's getting late. So Julia hears a knock at the door, and basically this person says Julia and falls in. And you can see, like, he has these welts all over his face. And he's dead, basically. And her parents actually recognize him. He's Dr. Napier. And Julia's like, well, wait, how do you guys know him? Because Julia knows him from working at the commission. And they're like, did he say anything before he died or anything? And she's like, no. But what Julia realizes is that his welts look like the welts that happen when Death Web, her enemies, when they attack people, they have these welts and then they die. So she changes into her Spider-Woman costume without her parents seeing, and of course Rachel knows she's Spider-Woman, and they're like, where'd she go? And so she, scouts around in the back of her house, and there's this huge hulking spider-like creature, and his name's Therax, and he uses the chains from her daughter's swing to try to strangle her. And what happens is there's three of them. There's this guy, a girl named Arcane, and then a teleporting guy, which I can't remember his name for some reason. So she gets away from him, and she realizes that her parents and Rachel might be in danger, so she leads him away from her house. She leads them to this marina that she thinks, will be empty, but there's these two kids there. And so Tarek grabs the girl, as a hostage, and Julia's like, don't do it. And so what she does is she uses her psi webs to grab him from behind. And she, pulls him. He goes off balance. The kids go in the water. Um, she punches him, but, gets away. He gets back. She runs the kids' boats, up onto the dock, trying to get away from him. And, like, all this time, she's asking him, what did you do to Dr. Napier? Why did you do that to him? And of course he's not answering. He's not saying anything. So she sees him come from behind him, from behind her. He has six arms. He's like this ugly spider creature. She punches him and he goes in the water and sinks. And so she's like, well, hopefully with any luck, he'll be so waterlogged that he'll stay down there for a while. But in the meantime, she needs to get back to, her family. But she tells the kids, like, hey, just call Avengers West and tell them about it and they'll pay for the damage. Like the Avengers West Coast. And also, call the police and the Coast Guard and then get out of here as fast as you can. So she goes back home like she's, exhausted and running on empty. And she gets in the door and then she just collapses. So in the next one, that one actually went pretty quick because it's mostly just like fight scenes. Well, I spend a lot of time talking about people's origins because that's what I do. So basically, oh, and I forgot to say that the ironic thing that is that the grandparents brought Rachel back a tarantula from the from Peru. And I'm thinking, of course this is in 1993, but I'm thinking, would they really let you bring a tarantula on the plane? Like, really? Do you really think they would? I mean, today for sure, no. I bet not, no. But back then, I guess, of course, the rules were way more relaxed. So maybe, I don't know. It just, and interesting. And of course, they picked a tarantula on purpose, and she's Spider-Woman, and her daughter named the tarantula Charlotte. So in the next issue, they talk more about her origin, and we get more answers on what's going on. So I hope you will join me for the next issue where we learn how Spider-Woman got her powers. Because normally I talk about that first, but since this is like her origin story, I wasn't going to, since we're going to talk about it in the comic book, I might as well not tell you. So I hope you join me for that one. And until then, bye.